Hi, I'm kind of making a little, I wouldn't say a tribute, but I'm kind of want to give some thoughts on the passing of what I consider these days, one of the remaining kind of like true, all-encompassing kind of artists, and that was the passing of David Bowie. And if you're my age now, I mean, I'm in my mid 50s, but I grew up in when I was say in my mid-teens, in like the mid 70s. Um, David Bowie was a big star, but he was like super huge back in the mid '70s, especially in places like what would be considered like flyover country in the USA here. And I want to explain why he was and why he remained such a kind of a trailblazer. I wasn't a huge fan, although I mean I was kind of a fan, but I never saw him in concert, and I kind of wish I had. Um, what I think what was exceptional about David Bowie is he lived in that era where you could like if you didn't like what you were, you could like change, you could like evolve and change your persona. You could be so creative, not only in what the content you made, but in the image that you wanted to project. I mean, he had so many personas through the years, and he was very generous with his talents, and he loved apparently loved to work with a lot of different people, and he loved to work with a lot of hugely talented people, famous people, and maybe not so famous. Um, and I think that's what appealed to a lot of people, especially like in my neck of the woods, because if you lived in like the live in like in America here, in like the you didn't live on the coast, you lived in what would be considered flyover country. You would it's like what was your reality is like you grew up in a certain kind of, I wouldn't say class, like working class or whatever, but it's like you would grow up and you would like you kind of like your future was kind of like already mapped out for you as to what you would be if you didn't, unless you radically wanted to change and move to a different part of the country or get some kind of different job or career that maybe that hadn't been set out for you. And I think that's what the appeal of artists like David Bowie was, especially in my neck of the woods. You could like create you know a persona or whatever, be what you wanted. And back the music business then was like, I don't know what the word would be, but they were still at that point, even in the mid '70s, where they would still basically let the artists do what they wanted, just as long as they saw, as they saw the money coming in, and the units being moved, as far as records and that would go. And there weren't that many artists back then doing that. I mean, you could say maybe someone, maybe like Neil Young or somebody, but he was not as radical with his persona. He was still like the kind of like the you know West Coast hippie kind of folky hippie type. But David Bowie was a lot different. He injected a lot of different things. He put more theater into his concerts and things like that, and that he kind of like stretched the boundaries on that. And I think that appealed to a lot of people, really. Um, what I think what impressed me personally about David Bowie was the records he made. He wouldn't sell, he wouldn't make like the same kind of record. If the one record sold a lot, he wouldn't make another record just like it. He would make, each one would be like a like a Goodbye Yellow Brick Road of Elton John's, or the Beatles' Sergeant Pepper. Each one would be you know something completely different almost. And he didn't play it safe. And but then again, he through his career, after he built such a strong name or whatever, he had the license to do that, and he was still he kept his popularity pretty much. But he also apparently he also is very private in his private life too. Um, like I said, I learned of his death pretty almost immediately because I listened to the BBC overnight uh, news on one of the FM NPR stations in out of Milwaukee. So I learned the news as it officially broke or whatever, and then I'm just making this video now after I've gotten home from my third shift job, and I watched some coverage on Sky News here on the internet and on American networks on CBS. They had a thing on him too. But I think that's why I wanted to make this video. I don't have many records by him, and I think these are the ones that I have found at like Goodwill, and I think that's a testament to David Bowie that I have not found many at Goodwill. Most people probably covet and cherish the records that they do have or tapes that they have gotten of David Bowie. But the few I do have is I got the Hunky Dory record, which is in great shape. I have two of the same cover. I have the changes. This is like my favorite. In fact, my I think I mentioned this when I showed this record maybe in a previous video. My personal all-time favorite tracks here are Rebel Rebel and Golden Years. Fame, when I talked about being in high school in the mid 70s when Bowie was like he was up there on the front page of popularity, I guess. Um, Little memory when I had to ride a school bus or whatever um, in the high school or whatever, and there was like you had the usual characters on the school bus, and you'd have like the kind of like the burnout types or whatever, or I wouldn't call them burnouts, but they were kind of like the edgier kids or whatever. And there was this one girl I remember, and she had like the thick kind of like, which was like this was the fashion at the time. Like if you know who the Runaways were, the band, or Joan Jett. I mean, these were she was like she could have been in the Runaways. She had like the thick eyeliner or whatever or whatever. But she had this is like she had one of the shoebox cassette recorders because this is even before the era of the boombox. They didn't have the boombox hadn't even been invented yet. They had like those kind of shoebox cassette recorders, and she had like a I think she had made like a mixtape of different stuff, and one of the songs she used to play a lot on the bus was Fame, and so I really think of that song. I always think of being in high school there, um, back in the mid '70s then. But like I said, I had that one. I also found this other one, for instance. It's in this cover, but it's actually the David Live. Um, and I don't know if this was a double album or what. I guess no. I only have one record, but it was the side A and side D. I don't think I've even played it yet, but I probably play it pretty soon. But yeah, it is. I gotta say that you know there are not that many true artists really in the music business um, still, and if they are, they had to have started back in an era when the business would let them do pretty much what they wanted because they knew that they really didn't understand uh, what was happening in music, but they were happy to have them do what they do because what they made was selling. Okay, it's kind of sad today because it isn't the case now because um, the ones that put out records now are pretty much like obedient little shills of the business. They just go along and do what they're told, and they get like they get the wheelbarrow full of money or whatever at the end of the day. But it doesn't really result in any real lasting art or music or whatever, and that's kind of sad because you know, I mean, people are going to vote with their pocketbooks even now. I mean, or even with their time. I mean, yeah, we can you can download and stream stuff, but it's like, do you want to listen to something that you want music that'll last a lifetime or music that'll last a lunchtime? I mean, it comes down to that. So that's kind of like my little tribute to David Bowie. And like I said, I always admired one thing I admire about artists is that they believe in what they do, and they believe in variety, and they don't insult their audience or the public by just churning out the same thing over and over. And a guy like David Bowie was definitely not one of those kind of people. But if you see like clips of his videos or whatever from his last album, which was just released, I think he knew that that he didn't have much longer, and but he had the class to kind of like keep it private, keep it to himself. So with that, I'll say goodbye for now, and you'll see more stuff from me, obviously, on records and stuff. So with that, I'll say goodbye, and you know we'll see you again real soon, I hope. Bye.